Welcome back to Crypto Hipster. Last time we spoke about four pillars of Jupiter, my upcoming book, Inheriting Saturn. We talked about Bill Wilson, founder of Alcoholics Anonymous. We talked about Hank Greenberg, who was the second ever CEO of AIG. We spoke about Charlie Lee, founder of Litecoin, and David Schwartz, the director of the Litecoin Foundation. Today, we're going to talk about more examples and more people from my new book. Now, next episode, we're going to talk about Satoshi Nakamoto, not about who he was, but about why he left. And that decision to disappear wasn't simply mysterious, it was stewardship. And Charlie Lee stepping away from Litecoin was also stewardship, and Hank Greenberg carrying on from CB Star was stewardship, and the purest example of all stewardship, Bill Wilson, once he left, AA took off. Many were people then when he first started, but there always had to be that first founder, that first someone to show up. But the question is, the harder question is this. When a founder chooses not to become a permanent ruler of the thing he created and he leaves, or leaves through death or through voluntary decision, there's a much harder question that comes up. And if founders step aside, who inherits the system? Not ownership perspective, but the responsibility for it. Right? Because when it comes to blockchain, they don't wake up every morning and improve themselves, right? People improve them. Developers, researchers, entrepreneurs, founders, and builders. So today, on this episode, I want to tell you about four of them. Okay. One of the interesting things that happened while recording hundreds of interviews is that, patterns begin to emerge. Patterns, not just technology patterns, but human cycle patterns. You stop remembering token symbols. And instead, you remember conversations, moments where you talk to people and what they said, and that stay with you. And a lot of what people have said have stayed with me over the years, over the past half decade. So, every once in a while, several interviews begin pointing toward the same idea, whether they realize that they're connected. For me, these four builders built on Solana. Now, not because I own Solana, I don't. I hold no Solana. But Solana is one of the greatest comeback stories in crypto's history, isn't it? The founder walks away or gets sent to prison, right? The community sees a token and a blockchain that's nearly dead, and they bring it back. They make it valuable. So those four builders are Mitchell Gildenberg, Joanna Zeng, Chris Chung, and Michael Repetny. Different companies, different problems. You probably never heard of them, or might have heard of maybe one or two, but they have different personalities. They're not social media influencers. They're not marketers. They're not, they are builders. So all four, though, demonstrated something remarkably similar. None of them behaved as though Solana belonged to them. It didn't. They behaved as though they had inherited something worth improving. So Mitchell Gildenberg is an engineer. You can hear it almost immediately in our interview a couple of years ago. He isn't chasing headlines. He's not chasing hype cycles. He thinks about infrastructure, oracles, randomness, data feeds, the invisible plumbing that allows applications to flourish and function. And you don't hear about downtime on Solana anymore, do you? No. Nobody celebrates plumbing until it breaks. Stewardship often looks exactly like that, doing the work that most people never notice at all because the system depends upon it. Joanna Zeng arrived from a completely different direction. Wall Street, Coinbase, optimism, Alio. Instead of asking how to replace every existing system, she asked how systems could cooperate. Not just the Solana system, but how could Solana and Ethereum cooperate? And she talks about performance, execution, interoperability, community ownership. And not because they're fashionable words, right? Community ownership's always been a buzz thing, right? But she believes infrastructure should expand opportunity rather than concentrate control. Again, that is stewardship, or an example of it. Now, Chris Chung approached the ecosystem through consumer products. His focus was not on convincing developers. It was on convincing ordinary people like you, like me. That's a completely different challenge, right? Technology doesn't matter if nobody can use it. Sometimes stewardship means making complexity disappear. Now, the people who build the best user experiences are often protecting a system just as much as the people writing the protocol. They are lowering the barrier for the next generation to participate going forward, right? Then there's Michael Repetny. Payments, commerce, real business, real merchants. The less exciting blockchain becomes, the more useful it becomes. Now, people don't think about Visa every time they buy groceries. They think about buying groceries, right? That's because infrastructure succeeds when it becomes boring. Michael's work reminded me that stewardship is not always innovation. Sometimes it's reliability. Sometimes success is when nobody notices anything happening at all. Now, here's what's fascinating, I tell you. None of these conversations were really about Solana. They were about responsibility. Every founder inherited constraints they didn't create. Every founder inherited software they did not write. And every founder inherited communities that they did not build. Their job wasn't to start over from scratch. Their job was to improve what already existed. That is inheritance. So it reminds me of something that's very much older than crypto. You know, every generation inherits institutions, not corporate institutions. The AIG, or what's left of it today, is not the same AIG I walked into in 2005. And the one I walked into in 2005 was much different than the one I've heard from 1980s and 90s. But I wasn't there. I only inherited what preserved, what remained. So those institutions are not just institutions, they're families. Everybody has a family tradition or story they preserve. Businesses, of course, right? Churches for 2,000 years or more. Countries, recovery programs. None of us built them or all of them, right? Yet all of us influence what happens next. The question is not whether we inherited them. The question is whether we leave them healthier than we found them. And I've seen plenty of instances where things have not been as healthy as they were before. But I've seen other instances, like Solana, where they are. So, one of the mistakes we make in technology is believing innovation only comes from founders. If a company, even traditional companies, if a company fails or succeeds, it's because of the CEO. It's never the employees did it. It's always, let's celebrate or let's blame the CEO. Same thing with founders. I mean, founders matter. They do, right? But eventually, the builders who come afterwards matter even more. Bitcoin without developers becomes software frozen in time. Ethereum without researchers stops evolving. Solana without builders becomes a little more than an idea. Systems survive because stewardship compounds. Now, that's why I entitled my next book, Inheriting Saturn. Inheritance is not receiving property or money. Inheritance is accepting responsibility. Saturn in mythology represents time. And time eventually separates every founder from every creation. The founder leaves, and time remains. The question time always asks us is simple. Who takes care of this now? So that's the lesson I keep hearing. I keep hearing as I write and finish this book, and especially in these 4 interviews. Not optimism, not price predictions, not hopium, not we're going to the moon, bro. Not we're going to change the world. They're just people who are quietly doing difficult work because they believe the system deserved to become a little bit better than when they found it. To me, that's stewardship. And I think that's one of the strongest signals I've seen across nearly 600 founder conversations. The healthiest ecosystems eventually stop evolving around their founder and begin producing stewards. Thanks for listening. I'm Jamil Hasan, the crypto hipster, and next time we're going to talk about Satoshi Nakamoto, and then we're going to talk about 4 people each time from my chapters in my book, like this one. And I want to find out next time, looking at a different lens of inheritance, what happens when a founder doesn't disappear, but instead has to decide how much control to keep and how much to let go, and rather, if they want to be anonymous the whole entire time. Thanks for tuning in. See you next week.